The Buddy That Hops, a Halloween short story, by Ben 10. Halloween had always been Eric's favorite time of the year. The decorations, the vibes, the events, and most importantly, the candy. The only thing he hated was when his mother took his candy to manage how much he could eat. His mom had told him not to come home later than 10:50 p.m. Eric went outside to meet his three friends, Brian, Joseph, and Cantrell. "Took you long enough," Joseph said. "My mom had to read me the rules and regulations before I went." Eric chuckled. "Moms are so overprotective." "We can definitely handle ourselves out here," Cantrell added. Brian grabbed 3 more bags from the one he was holding. "I brought the bags like you guys asked," he said, handing everyone a Halloween-decorated bag. "Cool, let's get this show on the road," Eric said. They walked to their first house, which, like the others in the neighborhood, was covered in decorations: skeletons, cobwebs, spiders, witches, pumpkins, and cauldrons filled with candy at each door. The group walked up to grab some candy. The sign above read, "Please take one." Of course, Cantrell didn't listen and took a handful after everyone got theirs. Eric and the rest of the group looked at him. "I'd expect no less from a big back like you," Eric said. Cantrell smiled. "Let's go to that house over there." Everyone began moving toward the next house, but Eric turned and noticed a kid in a costume. It looked like a bright yellow bunny suit. It had to be none other than Buddy Hops, the cartoon character. Eric loved that show. It was hard to imagine any kid who didn't. Eric realized the kid was just standing still in the middle of the street. He looked around to see if the boy or girl was with anyone, but the streets were now empty. The other kids had already moved on. "Eric, come on," Joseph called. Eric saw how far behind he'd fallen and ran to catch up. The group had already collected their next batch of candy. When Eric turned to look again, the kid was still there, motionless, facing the same direction. Maybe they're lost or scared, he thought. Before he could say anything else, the group began heading to the other side of the neighborhood. "Hey guys," Eric said. "Do you think that kid over there is okay?" Everyone turned to look at the kid in the Buddy Hops costume. "He should be fine. He's probably just dozing off," Cantrell said. "He better snap out of it before the candy's gone," Brian joked. The group laughed it off and kept walking. A few houses later, they came across one that had no decorations at all. The windows were dark, and the porch light flickered weakly. Brian walked up to the door. "Brian, what are you doing?" Joseph asked. "They might have something good. Most of the candy we've gotten is mid," Brian said. "They clearly don't celebrate Halloween," Cantrell muttered. "Let's just make sure, then we'll go," Eric said. Brian knocked on the door. It creaked open from the force, as if it hadn't been fully shut. Now that they could see inside, they noticed how unkempt the place looked. The walls were cracked, the floor covered in dust, and the air smelled stale, like the house had been abandoned for years. Brian walked in first. "I don't think anyone lives here," he said. "Exactly. So let's leave," Joseph replied. Cantrell followed Brian inside. "Wouldn't hurt to do a little exploring. This Halloween's kinda boring anyway." Eric and Joseph hesitated, but eventually followed. The house was dark and smelled of dust and rot. The floorboards creaked beneath their shoes. They looked around. Broken furniture, torn wallpaper, and a staircase covered in cobwebs. They climbed to the second floor and saw a large hole in the roof. Moonlight poured through it, illuminating the decaying hallway. "Well, I think we've seen enough. Time to go," Eric said. "Fine," Cantrell muttered, finally giving up. They turned toward the stairs and froze. Peeking from behind the wall was the head of the Buddy Hops costume, the same one the kid from earlier had been wearing. Eric's breath caught. He hesitated before speaking. "Hey, I remember you. We're sorry. Do you, live here or something?" "There's no way anyone lives in this dump," Cantrell muttered under his breath. The kid didn't respond, just stepped fully onto the landing and started coming up the stairs, the faint squeak of the costume echoing in the silence. "My name's Eric," he said nervously. "And this is Brian, Joseph, and Cantrell." "Don't tell it our names, dude," Cantrell whispered sharply. "He does kinda creep me out," Joseph added quietly. "Be quiet, or he'll hear you," Eric whispered back. "You must be shy. You don't have to be shy with us, though. We're from this neighborhood." "What about you? Where are you from?" The kid tilted his head slightly upward, the motion jerky, unnatural. The light from the hole in the roof glinted off the costume's large eyes. Eric looked up at the night sky, then back at the kid. "Do you want to trick-or-treat with us?" The figure stood still for a moment, then gave a slow, deliberate nod. Cantrell shot Eric a look of disbelief. "He's just shy," Eric said quickly. "I used to be like him. Give him a chance." The group left the house together, the yellow bunny quietly following behind. They told him he could share some of their candy later, since it was getting late and they'd all be heading home soon. The group kept walking until they reached a dead end. They had visited every house in the neighborhood. They were about to turn back when the kid suddenly pointed toward the forest up ahead. "Do you see something?" Eric asked. The kid didn't respond, just kept pointing. The group exchanged uneasy glances. Then, without a word, the kid began walking into the forest. "Hey!" Eric called out, taking a few steps after them. Brian grabbed his shoulder. "I don't want to get in trouble, man. Rule number 1, never wander off into the forest." "Let's just let him go." Eric pulled away. "It's dangerous. Anything could happen to him." "Eric, wait!" Cantrell called. "Screw it," Joseph said. "Let's make sure Eric doesn't get himself hurt." They all ran after the two, following the faint crunch of leaves beneath their feet. The forest grew darker the deeper they went, far beyond where anyone usually hiked. The air felt heavy, the only sound their breathing, and the wind brushing through the trees. Finally, they stopped. The kid stood at the edge of a crater. In the center sat a large, cracked rock that shimmered faintly under the moonlight. "What is this?" Eric asked. "Is this what you wanted to show us?" "Oh, great," Cantrell muttered, folding his arms. "We're gonna get in trouble because he wanted to show us a rock." "Hey, Brian," Joseph whispered. "Doesn't this kinda look like a—" "Yeah," Brian said quietly. "I think so." Eric stepped forward. "Okay, bunny boy, this is cool and all, but we should head home now." Snap. The kid's arm bent backward, at an unnatural angle. Then the other arm did the same. The group froze. Before they could move, the costume began to tear and stretch, the body beneath it twisting and convulsing. The bright yellow fabric darkened, melting into a shapeless, writhing mass of black. Then it began to form again, longer, taller, sharper. It was Buddy Hop's, but not the one from TV. This version looked real, horrifyingly real. Its fur was dirty and matted, its flesh decayed and peeling, bone pushed through its chest, the rib cage visible beneath the thin layer of fur. Its hands ended in long, needle-like claws. Its eyes were hollow pits of blackness, endless, empty. Its mouth stretched into an unnatural grin, lined with rows of needle-sharp teeth. The long, rabbit ears twitched. The nose twitched too, fast and erratic. No one moved. No one breathed. Then it took 2 slow steps forward, each one echoing with the sound of cracking bones. Eric gathered the courage to finally yell, "Run!" Everyone stepped back, ready to sprint, but the creature grabbed Eric's leg and slammed him to the ground. Brian, Joseph, and Cantrell rushed forward, lifting the heavy rock and smashing it onto Buddy Hop's head. The creature raised one hand to block the blow, the other still gripping Eric. Cantrell grabbed a sharp piece of the broken rock and drove it through the creature's hand. It released Eric, jerking back in silent agony. Then, before their eyes, the wound began to close, the flesh knitting itself back together as if time were rewinding. They didn't wait. They ran. The forest echoed with their footsteps, and behind them, the faint, rhythmic crunch, crunch, crunch of something following. Buddy Hop's was chasing them, silent except for the sound of its feet and the creak of its joints. Eventually, they stopped to catch their breath and hid behind a cluster of large trees. The night was quiet. Too quiet. Then Eric peeked out and froze. Standing a few feet away was his mom. "Mom?" he whispered, his voice trembling. He started to step out from behind the tree, but Joseph grabbed his arm, his face pale. "Eric, wait! I don't think that's your mom. Look," he pointed toward her legs. She wasn't wearing shoes. Her legs and feet were pitch black, covered in tiny blinking eyes. The creature turned its head sharply toward them. They ducked back down, holding their breath. "Crap," Eric whispered. "Do you think she saw us?" Joseph gestured for him to stay quiet. Then they heard it, the sound of bones cracking. Eric's mother began to change, her eyes turning completely black, her limbs elongating, one arm twisting backward while another stretched out, reaching into the darkness. She began moving toward them. Fast. "Run!" They all bolted through the forest. Behind them, the shape was shifting again, flickering between Buddy Hop's and the black, eye-covered mass, its form unstable, glitching, struggling to hold one shape. The group didn't stop running until they reached the neighborhood. Gasping, they sprinted up the steps to Eric's house and burst through the door. They all got in trouble for coming home late. When they tried to tell their parents what happened, no one believed the supernatural parts, only that someone might have been in a costume trying to scare or kidnap them. Eventually, even the kids started to doubt themselves. But a few days later, the news spread. Some of their classmates had gone missing that Halloween night and never came home. Eric and his friends didn't need to say anything. They already knew what had happened. Buddy Hop's had found new trick-or-treaters.